At least 38 Vistara flights have been cancelled just today. 15 Vistara flights from Mumbai, 12 from Delhi and 11 from Bengaluru. Just on one day. These are the visuals on your screen. Look at them. Gives you a sense of what's been happening over the last 24 hours. This saga has been going on for at least a week. And if we look at just the last 48 hours, at least 88 Vistara flights have been cancelled or delayed, affecting over 15,000 passengers across India. Passengers visibly upset, frustrated, agitated, deepening the crisis for the airlines and themselves. But believe you me, this crisis is only adding to the massive passenger woes and possibly reflective of what's ailing our aviation industry. And our aviation industry, which has seen some fair amount of turbulence over the last few months. We'll get to that. But back to what's ailing Vistara, which, by the way, had emerged as a very competitive and trusted alternate for budget flyers. Many have been saying this. Vistara has said they are monitoring the situation closely, admitting to crew unavailability. Sources have told Times Network that at least 15 senior first officers or pilots have quit just recently. The immediate trigger behind this unfolding crisis that they are offering larger aircraft on select routes and are also reducing the number of flights. Ministry of Civil Aviation has said they are closely monitoring the situation, but flight operations are managed by airlines themselves, quite literally leaving passengers to their own fate at this point. The immediate trigger for Vistara crisis at least seems to be the fallout of the merger with Air India, where pilots are upset with what seems to be a change in their salary structure. The short notice sign-up option given to them if they don't want to be left out of the merger. My colleague Adarsh Vepacheda joins us right now. Adarsh, break this down for us. Why are passengers bearing the brunt of what's unfolding? And is this crisis reflective of a larger concern for flyers?
Oh, yes, it is, Sneha. Passengers are having to pay the brunt. They're having to face the brunt at this point in time because the pilots of Vistara are unhappy. It all boils down to the pay structure. Essentially, there are two pay structures that we're talking about here. One is the 70-hour pay structure. The other is a 40-hour pay structure, in the sense that pilots do get paid on an hourly basis. As of now, Vistara has a 70-hour pay structure, which means if a pilot were to fly 70 hours in a month, he or she gets a fixed income. But that is now going to go down to 40-hour pay system, which means in case if a pilot were to fly for 70 hours, he or she will get a fixed pay only for 40 hours, and the remainder 30 hours, there will be an additional pay. This, Vistara pilots claim, will be a huge financial setback for them. And that is why they are protesting, they are unhappy, they're reporting sick. And as you rightly pointed out, several first officers seem to have pulled the plug on Vistara at this point in time. Now look at the kind of conditions that Vistara has put forth to its pilots. They've said, in case if you do not sign up for this new salary structure, then no slot on upgrade sequence list. In simple words, this means no promotion going forward. No one-time bonus. Will be deemed not interested to work with Air India and won't be included in transition to Air India. So in a sense, it almost seems as though you have to, as a pilot, you have to sign up for this new deal or just get out of the airline. Now, this, of course, brings to focus the larger picture of how airlines are dealing with passengers, how airlines are dealing with operations, so to speak. Air India has been slapped a fine, Indigo has been slapped a fine, SpiceJet have been slapped a fine. Somewhere it seems as though both resources, that is, both material and operational resources, have not been utilized properly. Again, puts a spotlight on matters such as safety and convenience as well, Sneha.
Right, Adarsh, thank you very much for joining us, for explaining those very crucial aspects to what may be particularly wrong with what's unfolding with Vistara and the passengers, but also drawing our attention to an overarching problem that the Indian aviation sector, if I may say so, may really be struggling with or maybe indicative of. Thank you, Adarsh, for joining us. I'm also being joined right now by Radharamanan Panicker at this point, a distressed flyer who had taken the Vistara flight recently. Mr. Radharamanan Panicker, thank you very much for joining us. Could you tell us when did you take this flight and what had happened to you?
I was returning back from Delhi on 31st evening. My flight was for 8:30 p.m. I reached the airport around 7:30. Around 8 o'clock, it was announced that the flight is rescheduled for 9:30. And thereafter, there was no announcement until 10:30 or so, when they said the flight is going to take off at 11:30. By the time, we also realized that there were flights going to Ahmedabad which were getting cancelled and rescheduled and all that, and a lot of passengers making a noise around the counter. But I would like to say this, that despite the problem, the manager who came down was able to address the issue. I'm not saying it was satisfactory for everybody, because you want to get back home after a long day, and there were a lot of people carrying their parents, their children. There was somebody who had come down from US, had to go back because her father was dead, and they had to claim the body from the morgue, and all those stories, which are saddening actually. But the manager took control, and unlike many other carriers, they were not rude to the passenger. They listened to the passenger. They made changes for next day's flight. They gave them refund, and they arranged for some food after some delay. But they did arrange substantial amount of food for people who were staying back. And I would say this, that unlike the past, where the airlines would have an interline arrangement, where if there is a problem in one carrier, they would accommodate the passenger to other carriers. This was not happening. I asked them, why can't they accommodate us in Air India? They said Air India is full and we do not know. So there was no talk between Vistara and Air India. And by the time people were talking about pilots getting sick or deliberately reporting sick and taking or making use of the sick leave, apparently there is a policy that you cannot carry forward your sick leave. So all of them took that opportunity, whereas the pay scale discussion was going on, to all go report sick, because anyway they said we will not be able to carry forward the leave, which was really, really stupid, because they were keeping the passenger interest at the back of all their own issue.
Right. No, thank you so much for adding perspective, Mr. Panicker. In fact, it's very interesting to hear this from you, because on one hand, you had to be in the airport for almost 3 hours, if I'm not wrong.
4 hours. 4 hours.
From what should have been your takeoff time. 4 hours.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So almost 4 hours you had to be in the airport. But if you also look at, you seem to be at least relieved of the fact of how the airline did speak to you, did reach out to you. Not the best way that they could have handled the situation possibly, but at least there was some empathy in the way they spoke to you, unlike the earlier instances that have come to the fore or the media's attention. But it's also very worrying, Mr. Panicker. Is this the first time that something like this is happening to you? Or have you had experiences, your family members have had experiences with other airlines? Have you had similar experiences before?
But unlike the earlier time, I felt that they were trying their best. I'm not saying it was good. I wish, they had anticipated the problem, because this was known. The salary discussion was going. This was known that they are going to report sick. They should have known about it, because I think the cancellation started happening somewhere around 5 p.m. in the evening. And by the time they should have taken control, they should have started sending out messages. So people would have not come to the airport. They would have
Right.
made alternate arrangement. That did not happen. So it was worrying that there were people problem, there were process problem, and I'm worried that this explosive growth in aviation, are we ready for it in terms of people and the process? Because if you look at earlier days of Indian Airlines and all those people, they were experienced people on
No,
ground. Today we have youngsters.
Mr. Panicker, just one more thing. You've said you've had 4 prior instances like this.
Yeah.
Over how many months, or what's the duration that you've had such 4 instances?
No, over a 2-3 years period. I'm not saying it's so frequent. Vistara, it was surprising because we got caught unaware, because Vistara we expected, backed by Singapore Airlines and Tata, they are the best, and so we're paying a little bit extra. So we were caught by that aspect, that it had to happen to Vistara and not other carriers.
All right. Okay, Mr. Panicker, thank you so much for joining us, for giving us all those perspectives. Very important one at that. Thank you again for joining us. Let me just introduce my panel at this point. I'm being joined by Mr. Sanat Kaul, who is a former Civil Aviation Joint Secretary, Dr. Vandana Singh, who is an aviation expert, Devesh Agrawal, who is a chief analyst for BangaloreAviation.com, and I'm also eventually going to be joined by Sachin Taparia, who is a founder for Local Circus. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Sanat Kaul, and a very important question that I have to ask you at this point. How do you really look at what's unfolding? One, of course, with Vistara. Now, the DGCA has said we have taken note of it. It's the airlines that's supposed to manage everything. But is that where it really stops?
Yes. You know, in my view, it's very unfortunate what is happening, but it is a case of merger and acquisition. Now, 2 airlines, both belonging to Tata, are going to merge. And they have made some offer to Vistara employees, especially the junior, not the senior pilots, the commanders as they are called, but the junior pilots, that you take a pay cut from 70 to 40 hours and something else. And as a result, you will then be merged into Air India in their staffing pattern. Now, this is an HR problem. It's a very important HR problem which happens when even private companies other than aviation also merge. And this happened in the case of Air India and Indian Airlines earlier, when Indian Airlines took promotion 6 months in advance before merging, and therefore they were able to dominate in Air India, much to the grievance of the senior Air India commercial staff and other people whom I talked to. So this is happening again here. It's somehow not well managed. But the point is that the junior staff, junior pilots are aggrieved. The senior pilots are not that aggrieved, to the best of my knowledge. And this is taking place at the cost of the passengers. It's something which the airline should have handled much better, but merging the 2 airlines has its own problem.
Allow me to just ask one more question. So
happening.
At least what the information that we've been able to access, at least 15 senior officers have also been affected. These are senior first officers, so senior pilots effectively. They have also been affected.
First officers, so, they're not the commanders.
That being one part, of course, how the acquisition is happening, the process, all of that being one part. But really, at the end of the day, even if it's between 2 companies, it's the passengers who are really getting affected.
Absolutely.
We heard one of the passengers speak about how there was a person from US who was coming in because the father had passed away. You had children, you had elderly people. Of course, well on the airline that there was somebody who actually spoke with the passengers with much empathy. But really, is that where the DGCA's role ends, sir, in India?
Yes. No, it doesn't end there, but DGCA is too busy as a safety person, as a safety regulator. He does not have time for passenger. Now, in Europe, even for a delayed flight, which is delayed by more than, 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours, they have to pay, not only give hotel accommodation if required, taxi fare, food, everything, but also up to 600 euros as compensation for the delay by one night. There is nothing like that in
That's
India.
very interesting. In
There
fact, I
is-
have a very interesting perspective on this.
And I have made,
Go ahead, sir.
I was way late. I mean, I had to spend a night in Europe, and I was then given 600 euros, which is, for an Indian, it's a very nice thing to have, but they're used to it. It's part of their rules. So anyhow, that's incidental. What I'm saying is that
Absolutely.
merger and
Okay.
acquisition is taking place. It's a clumsy deal. It's not well managed and has led to a lot of passenger crisis. Now, beyond that, DGCA
All
can,
right. Okay. Let me
hum and
just get
haw,
in others as
put a
well, sir.
fine
Let
on
me
the
just get
airline.
others for the introductory remarks, and I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Devesh Agrawal,
All
if
right.
I can come to you, you've also been a pilot, Devesh Agrawal. You had one of the passengers speak about his experience, but frankly,
Yes.
he also spoke about how this was a known issue. Pilots calling in sick. He also spoke about, this is not something that can be carried forward or whatsoever that reason be. That's not really the focus at this point. The problem is, was this known? Was this unknown? Could this have been dealt in a very different way? Could the passengers have been could they not be at the brunt of this, considering there have been so many instances over the last several months where the airlines have been at fault? It may not be the Vistara-like situation, but the DGCA has taken action, given notices, given fines, where the airlines clearly have been on the wrong side.
Sneha, firstly, thank you for having me. And in short, first question I will ask you. The DGCA has taken what action? Oh, we have levied a fine. What, as Mr. Kaul said, we have a document called the passenger charter. Okay, it is not worth the paper it is printed on. It is literally like, we have a chhanni. It's like trying to hold water in a strainer. They have given every kind of loophole to the airlines. That passenger charter has been written by airlines just to try and show, oh, we have something to protect passengers, but in reality, there is no protection. What Mr. Kaul was referring to was EU 261, the regulation, which provides very clearly, if your flight is delayed X number of hours, you shall pay this much. End of story. No questions, no ifs, ands, or buts. Here, it is this, okay, we will
So
give you
are you saying
exception
that's a provision that's been provided for? Is that what you're saying? Because I didn't know about it. I'm sure our viewers don't know about this.
Sneha, just literally Google while I'm talking to you, passenger charter, Ministry of Civil Aviation. You'll see the document. It's a PDF document. And then you see the number of exemptions that are given in that. But coming to what you talked about, anticipation, this is, honest to God, I'm going to say something a little harsh. The Tatas are fully to blame for this. Okay, they are trying to go about this in a very ham-handed way. You right now in Air India itself have three different camps. You have the legacy Air India camp who comes from that bureaucratic mindset. You have the Bombay House camp, which is really not an aviation company, but they're very good administrators. And then you have the Singapore Airlines camp. And, I've lived 7 years in Singapore. Singaporeans by nature, they have this very competitive attitude. It's called kiasu. It's the closest equivalent I can take is called FOMO. It's fear of missing out. But they are firstly within that one airline itself, they're trying to bring in three cultures. You have separately created a culture of excellence using a whole bunch of new people, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed youngsters who have now grown into certain roles, and you have created a excellence product in the name of Vistara. Now you're trying to deliberately force merge it without this thing, with the culture of Air India. And now you're trying to say, hey, Vistara, essentially the signal you're saying is, Vistara, you are going to get the second tier. Air India people are going to get the first tier. Guess what? The Vistara people are bailing out. All their good people are slowly either they have been absorbed into Air India or they have left the airline. So the airline is losing out that entire culture of excellence. I mean, I really wish the Tatas would have taken 2-3 years.
No, so this is what I'm asking. This is my next question. This is my next question. But actually, before I come to you, Mr. Devesh Agrawal, let me just go to the other two for their introductory remarks as well. Dr. Vandana Singh, you're an aviation expert, and taking on from where Mr. Devesh Agrawal left, and he's made some extremely important points. But Dr. Vandana, one, you had a harrowing experience recently. I believe you were made to wait on the Vistara flight, if I'm not wrong. Do tell us about that. But apart from that, is the Indian aviation system, the ecosystem, failing an airline that had managed to gain the confidence of flyers in the domestic budget sector, which is a big deal?
Thank you, Sneha, for having me on the show. And firstly, I would say that yes, I've had a recent experience, 25th of March, which was Holi, and I was flying to Chennai. And over there, yes, I did see that the people were very snappy. The staff were very snappy. I was on 3 Alpha, and you were being served food. And while you were having food, you were being told, have you finished? And that was sort of a very, very snappy attitude. Asking for a cup of tea. And now, sitting on 3 Alpha, that's premium economy, asking for a cup of tea also was like, I believe I had it on for about 8 minutes, the call button. Till I called up, till the lady came forward, I had to snap it again and ask her. And she said, I said, what is your protocol? She says, about 5 to 8 seconds. I said, and this is 8 minutes, and you don't serve a cup of tea? If this is my state here, then what is the state of the passengers behind? So you can see that sort of uneasiness in the staff. You can already see it in the cabin crew. You can feel the pulse, which is very, very disheartening. Even coming back on 29th flight, I was on 3 Bravo. Again, I had a similar experience coming back from Chennai to Delhi. So having said that, yes, it is unfortunate to see Vistara go this way, because we've sworn by Vistara all through domestic routes, and even certain routes outside India, we've chosen Vistara for its quality. And mergers and acquisitions is something which is known, which is well known. It happens in the era, it's been happening for a long time. And why couldn't a company so good as Tata, with the best of class, best in people, why could not it handle the transition effectively? Why could not there be a plan A, B, C? Why should they be getting into this mess? Why couldn't they take a longer duration and settle things right? And why we talk about customer delight. This is something I want to talk about. Customer delight, first side, you make the external customer uneasy, unhappy with all this that we are seeing. What about the internal customer? I'm asking about the internal customer. Being an aviation personnel myself, why weren't the people told in time? Why wasn't there any transparency? Why were they given such short notices? You don't expect it from an airline such as from Tata's. That is best in class. You expect the best. So why couldn't the transition team have these plans in place? Why did they have to go through all this where people are now complaining? And I'm even told that 44% of the people, 44%, out of which 66% are paying extra to get certain seats, and families are separated, groups are separated. So what is going on? Why is this not being addressed with the best in class?
Right, I mean, very important questions, very important questions, Dr. Vandana Singh.
Sitting on 3 Alpha.
In fact, I have to take them to, no, absolutely. I have to take it to Mr. Sanat Kaul, but allow me first to just go across to Sachin Taparia, who's a founder for Local Circles. And it's very interesting to have him here because there's this interesting survey done by Local Circles. And what's the result of that? At least 9 out of 10 passengers want airlines to pay penalty directly to passengers, and 7 in 10 flyers have experienced flight cancellations, rescheduling. This is what I was being told by Mr. Devesh as well. But here's a survey that really backs up the absolute disarray our airlines and our aviation sector seems to be at this point. Sachin Taparia, what would you want to add?
Good to be here, Sneha, and it's heartening to hear some of the panelists here. We've done about 5 surveys over the course of last, 4 months, and the one on cancellation, like you rightly said, um, 7 in 10 have faced cancellation due to internal reasons of the airlines. And so it's a widespread
Okay.
problem. We had participation from 320 districts of the country. So it's really happening across the country. People are experiencing it. And, like some of the previous panelists have said, the issue here is that in the current Indian aviation system, we do not have the passenger or the flyer at the center or the core of it. It's in airlines internal operations, it's other priorities, but not the passenger. And that is why a lot of people feel that airlines, especially post the pandemic, have been cutting corners. And the entire equation today is in favor of the airlines as opposed to the passenger. And the classic example is, in the month of December, we had a senior citizen couple, who wrote on the platform about their ordeal, where they showed up 2 minutes late on the check-in counter, and they were denied boarding, and they were directed to the ticketing counter, where they could not get on the next flight.
Yeah.
They had to get on the flight that was 6 hours later, and they had to pay 3,000 rupees each as fare difference. Now, this is 2 minutes late to the check-in counter, a senior citizen couple. Um, Back from Hyderabad to Mumbai, the flight was 3 hours late, and the airline did not have to pay anything. The delays were announced in 30-minute slots, 30 minutes, then it was 1 hour, then it was 1 hour, 30 minutes. At most, food vouchers were given, and that's
Right.
the end of it. So people are basically saying that, look, when we make a reservation, we make a flight booking, we have hotel bookings, we have other travel plans, and everything costs money. So if you're going to cancel our flight, of course, you're going to refund the fare, but you need to pay a penalty. Just like, we pay the fare difference for showing up late at the check-in counter. You need to have a penalty, which is 25 to 50%, or, whatever is appropriate, which should be paid to the passenger if their flight is canceled for internal reasons of the airline. And I think that is what is needed. I think Mr. Kaul described that in the Europe,
Right.
you have a sort of a consumer regulator for the sector. I think that is missing in India. You have the safety regulator, who is basically focusing on
right.
flight safety, but you really don't have somebody to look after the consumer interest or the passenger interest. There is a charter which does not
Very
work for the
important.
passenger today.
That's true.
And that needs work.
That's true. Thank you so much for making those points. Mr. Sanat Kaul, if I can come to you, you heard Dr. Vandana as well, and she had some very pertinent points, actually questions that every passenger who would be taking any flight would be asking. Where's the accountability? Where's the transparency? Why are they not being respected for the money that they are paying to buy the tickets that they are buying? In fact, there's this article that there's this report, the leaflet report, in fact, and we looked at some of the instances, the practices or the malpractices, if I may say, and Dr. Vandana also mentioned some of them, but to just list out some: false urgency, basket sneaking, where you have consumers find unexpected items in their carts, subscription tax, confirm shaming, forced actions, bait and switch, hidden costs, disguised ads, so many aspects, apart from what they were saying even about how you pay for more tickets, but you for the seats that are supposed to be reserved, you don't get them together. Children are given separate. I even saw online people who posted their tickets. In one instance, a 3-month-old child was given a separate ticket apart from the parents. Now, okay, you may do an auto booking, but if you have to reserve this beforehand, you have to pay extra. Sanat Kaul, isn't this issue really ailing the aviation sector in India? Are we really not at the cusp of what I may call a big fallout?
Well, I don't think I agree with you fully on that issue. Why? Because there's been a massive growth of aviation. There's no doubt about that. And these things are bound to happen. In general, I'm not talking about this particular Vistara incident. which is a totally different incident. But when
True.
you are talking about the rest, about the passenger complaints, what happens is that you have only two regulators in the country. One is the DGCA, which is a safety, essentially a safety regulator. He is responsible for safety of airlines. Any accidents, anything, he is the person. But he or she is the person. But and the other regulator is the Airport Economic Regulatory Authority that regulates the airport taxes and airport landing fees and other things. Uh, but I have been pleading for a passenger regulator for the now passenger regulators. I've said it in many conferences and in many of these TV interviews that we need one because the passenger growth is huge, and there needs to be a passenger regulator who will look into the
Why is the
grievances of
government
the
not
passenger.
acting on
That's
this?
not happening.
Any reason why the government may not be acting on this?
Well, I can't talk for the government. It's for them to decide whether they think it's required or not required. So it's really presumptive of me to say anything. But there was also earlier a demand. In fact, I think it was cabinet approved, but I'm not sure, to convert DGCA into a authority, meaning an independent authority, because as long as there is no passenger regulator, the DGCA has to step in. And DGCA has hardly any time for passenger grievances. Passenger grievances are the last bit, and they come in thousands, and they are not able to look into it. So I think
Right.
the problem is that the growth of aviation is so much and so big in India. The growth has been double digit. It's domestic, it's international, everything. That DGCA is not in a position to handle
Okay.
passenger grievances unless we have a passenger grievance
Or I
regulator,
think
which is, I think, the need of the day. This issue will carry on. Coming back to Vistara issue,
I
Vistara
think
was
one thing,
is not
a
really
big takeaway from this show, if at all we have ministers, governments, the future ministers, the future government, whatsoever it may be, the elections are just round the corner. But here's a big takeaway from the show. I think it's high time that India does have a passenger grievance redresser. But Devesh Agrawal, if I might just come across to you next, and it's difficult to alienate passengers from how the crew is being treated. The two are very closely interlinked. Now, if you look at the last few instances, you've had DGCA slap fines on airlines for issues where rostering is an issue, where crew is not being given enough rest. You have pilots, you have air hostesses who have not been given enough rest. There are so many issues from safety to rostering that really seem to be a challenge for airlines. But this really should be mundane, everyday task that gets done.
I'm sorry, but while Mr. Kaul was speaking, I was, just nodding my head and kind of partly laughing. He talked about a passenger regulator. There is a passenger regulator. It is called the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Its job is not to run Air India, which it was doing. Its job is to formulate policy. That passenger charter is not formed by DGCA. It is formed by the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Its enforcement, there is a portal called Air Saver. It used to work very good about 5-7 years ago. Then it got dismantled and now it doesn't function properly. It's again under the Ministry of Civil Aviation. It is the Ministry of Civil Aviation who has to answer to you. It is the media who has to go and question the ministry and say, you've got this passenger charter with every possible exemption. There is even an exemption that if there is an ATC delay, you can, the airline is not obligated to give you any compensation. Try telling an airline there was a traffic jam on the way, they'll say that's your problem. I can say the same thing about an ATC delay. So I'm sorry, I'm speaking a bit passionately because I'm so frustrated by what all goes
You
on in
must.
India.
Please, you must.
The governance is so badly lacking. Everything seems to be just in the favor of the corporate big airline. We are having such fights over the flight duty time limits. Passengers are fatigued. There are tons of issues, and it is not so difficult. Why is it that the airlines are just saying, oh, we need to delay this, we need to delay the implementation of FDTL? At least, thank God, the DGCA said no. At least there is some kind of this thing. The DGCA is, in a way, taking a bit of a hard line. But I mean, the ministry, I'm very sorry, is abdicating its primary responsibility. Its primary responsibility is to the people of this country. It is to create policies. We all have aspirations. How often have we heard the minister turn around and say, "Oh yeah, we want to be the third largest aviation market in the world. Yeah, 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 yeah. And we have ordered 1,000+ aircraft." Where are you going to park the aircraft if you don't force airports to build airside infrastructure? All that they're doing is they're building these very fancy terminals, which are actually malls with aero bridges attached. They're not really airport terminals, but the other way around. There's lack of airside parking space. One runway at one major airport in India gets disturbed, the entire flight network of India starts getting disrupted. Things get no place for aircraft to land, to park. I mean, these are things that the government needs to be focusing on. They have to be these kinds of changes, I'm sorry, are not
Okay.
going to come with fines and all. They're going to come with policy. Once you form the policy, we already have consumer courts. This country has got all the legal provisions. It is a matter of putting the policy. After that, you don't need a regulator to enforce policy. We already have the consumer court system.
Okay. Devesh Agrawal, allow me to just get Sanat Kaul once again into this. Mr. Sanat Kaul, a very passionate argument here by Devesh Agrawal, who's also an expert in this area, but you've also worked with the government very closely. Is the government shying away from what should be its primary duty? 40 seconds to you, sir. 45 seconds.
Yeah, well, everything is with Civil Aviation Ministry. So yes, they are responsible. But all I'm saying is that functionally, you have to have divisions. You expect DGCA to perform with a double-digit growth every year and look into passenger grievances. It's not possible. So all I'm saying is that there should be another regulator for passenger grievances. That's all I'm saying. If you want to blame the minister for this, everything is, the buck stops at him. So fine. But I don't think that is the only way. I mean, being passionate is one thing, but being realistic is another thing.
Okay.
So I think there has to be some realism.
Okay.
Realism into
I
what
quickly
we are
interrupt.
discussing.
I'm sure he's an expert with several decades of experience in this aviation
but
sector.
just saying, one quick
so I'm
point.
sure
Just one
he
quick
is
point,
passionate, but also expert. Devesh, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I was just about to say there is the CAA, the Civil Aviation Regulator Bill. It was passed and taken by the cabinet in 2013. And after that, it has never been brought on the floor of the Lok Sabha in the last 11 years.
All right.
I want to ask Mr. Kaul, as the Civil Aviation Secretary at that time, probably, I don't know if it was during this tenure was there. What did the ministry do to push that Civil Aviation Bill onto the floor of the House?
I'll tell you. I can tell you that.
It has been approved by cabinet. It has been approved by cabinet.
But it was approved by the previous government. This government did not want to take it up. That's it.
See, so that's the thing. The
all
truth
right, that's
is coming
a very,
out
very
right
clear
there.
answer. And I guess that also really puts in a huge question to the government's intent to really take things forward when it needs to, with policies that may already be in place. But very quick last words from the other two panelists as well. Sachin Taparia, has this discussion given you the next idea for your next survey? I have got a couple of them. I'm sure you have also got.
There is. So Sneha, I think there is really an opportunity here with like Mr. Agarwal said, the Ministry of Civil Aviation to step up and start looking after consumer interests.
Absolutely.
And the second organization that we have in the country today, which we did not have 4 years back, is the Central Consumer Protection Authority under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, which can take up class action lawsuits on behalf of consumers. It can actually pass orders. It can you displayed some of the dark patterns that airlines are actually using as deceptive techniques. So it can take all of that up. So I think between the two ministries, the Consumer Affairs and the Civil Aviation Ministry, they've got to come up with something here that actually works for the passenger. So I think that's what is the key ask going forward.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Vandana Singh, your closing comments. 30 seconds.
Yes, thank you, Sneha. I would second this, and I would say there has to be a combination of regulatory enforcement and consumer education. And something has to come in where there has to be clear transparency, proactiveness, clear communication, and the need of the hour right now is to be realistic. And being realistic, given what we have, is to get to the customer directly, get to the passenger directly, be proactive, and advise what is delay, what is happening, when is the next flight, what is being refunded. This is the need of the hour right now. Let's be realistic.
That's right.
Thank you.
Absolutely. In fact, Dr. Vandana Singh, I couldn't have summed it up any better than what you have, so I leave it as the last word. Sanat Kaul, Dr. Vandana Singh, Devesh Agrawal, as well as Sachin Taparia, thank you very much, all four of you, for joining us, giving us very important perspectives. I just have one thing to say. India can do better than what's unfolding at our airports, and we must not be responsible, or India must not make an airlines that's actually very competitive just to fall out for another reason. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Time for a short break.